Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series. I'm incredibly excited today because I have the creative director and content producer behind Juan Morales Creative. He is part of the NHL social video team. He's been with TSN and Bar Down. I'm excited to have the man himself, Juan Morales, here, and I'm going to turn it over to him and let him introduce himself.
Thanks for the introduction there. I've actually never had someone refer to me as a creative director of my own company yet. So bonus points for that. That's
Happy.
something I'm trying to push because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little bit about myself. You said that my name is Juan. I'm a 25-year-old
Nice.
content producer, content director, living out of my apartment in Toronto, downtown Toronto.
Very cool.
I'm currently working full time for the NHL as part of their social video team. I'm a video editor. I go out on site, capture stuff. I love telling stories. That's, I think, the way I would
Yeah.
primarily describe myself and what I do. I know people are like, you shouldn't say you're a storyteller because people would understand that. But I think people in like the
Yes.
media and the creative industry get it. Like, I love telling stories, whether that's, with video, photo. I used to do graphic design. That's what I love doing. I love telling other people's stories. I love, you said it before, like you're a research nerd. Like before
Yeah.
we started this,
Yes.
I'm the same. Like whenever I'm doing something,
Yeah.
like whenever I'm doing some kind, because I'm doing my own podcast on YouTube. Whenever I'm talking to someone, I want to find
Yeah.
every single little detail so I can tell the best story possible. So I'm a storyteller. I don't know what else there is to
Yeah.
me to say right now, but I mean,
Perfect.
maybe things will come up.
Yeah. Perfect. And while you've been working in sports primarily, you do other things of you work on other projects as well. You do some weddings as well. You're looking to get into more commercials. But why sports? Why has it been sports for you?
That's a really good question, and I mean, I think it really just boils down to this is so cliche, and I think if you talk to anyone in the sports world, like you played sports growing up. I'm pretty sure everyone
Yes.
growing up played like soccer or hockey or wherever you live, whatever the primary sport, basketball, football, what have you. Like I grew up playing sports. I grew up watching sports. You also mentioned there, yeah, I do other creative works.
Yeah.
I do wedding work in the off season. That's kind of my, off season gig.
Yeah.
I also love doing just kind of my own creative video work, whether that's narrative, whether that's literally just doing YouTube videos. But the thing with sports, I don't know what it is. I think maybe just I love the fact that it's like a theater for different kinds of stories and moments. I think I love showcasing emotion, and there's probably no better theater in terms of like a medium to tell stories than sports.
Yeah.
Like for me, it really drew down to there's like a story behind why I'm still working in sports. I actually used to be a writer
Okay.
back before this would have been 6 years ago now, which is crazy. I
Yeah.
think before university, I'd never touched a camera in my life, but I knew I either wanted to get into kinesiology or the media world because
Interesting.
I wanted to stay in sports one way or another. The whole thing was like, if I can't play it professionally, which I mean, I think there comes a certain time in high school where everyone's like, all right, I'm not going to make it to the NHL or I'm not making it to the NBA.
Right.
So like when I had that moment, I'm like, okay, how can I stay in it? I don't know. I think there's
Yeah.
something about the community in sports. Like there's
Yeah.
kind of like a tribalism with it. Like people are like building a community together, like brotherhood, sisterhood, how I don't know. There's just something about sports that it's just always been a passion of mine. Even now, like, I can't play sports at a high level, but if my friends want to, play spike ball at the park or, go on the pond in the winter, I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
always been a thing for me. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but
Yeah.
that's why I'm still kicking doing this. I say that as if I'm like 50. I've only been doing this for 5 years, but I know the sport industry is really hard to stay in. So
Yes.
I'm glad I'm still able to be here, which is why I say it like that.
Yes. No, makes total sense. And I totally resonate with you. I'm like, my uncle always says to us, he's like, we all go down our different paths. He said, "Are you going to be an Olympic gymnast now in your life?" No, he said, but you have different paths to go down
Hmm.
where you can still be connected in ways like that. And that's always stuck with me because I was a cross country runner and I'm like, I am not a professional. I'm not going to the Olympics or anything, but I can still run a half marathon and that's great with me. That's where
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
get the experience. So totally resonate with you on that one. Now I'm very curious though, what did you play when you were growing up? Did you play hockey?
I played, I mean, like any other kid, I played soccer, obviously, when you're
Okay.
like 5 and you don't know which end of the field you're going to, and you have your parents yelling, you go the
Yes.
other way.
Yes.
I played hockey
Okay.
pretty late in my like childhood, closer
Okay.
to high school. I always watched it,
Yeah.
but like it was always an expensive sport growing up. I wanted to be a goalie, so like it makes
Oh
it even
God,
more
yeah.
expensive. Um, and so there was a lot of that, but I think by the time I got to high school, I finally convinced my parents. I'm like, "Come
Yeah.
on, like let me try it." And they're like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, like we'll let you."
Yeah.
And I played for a few years in high school, and it was great, and I still play here and there. I played rugby in high school. That was one of the sports I really enjoyed the most.
Okay.
I would play it right now if my body didn't feel like it was going to crumble after,
Yep.
like, you know what I mean? At 25, we all feel like we're 70. So,
Yep.
but yeah, mostly rugby and hockey growing up, and the odd sport here and there. I'm really into pickleball right now. I don't know if you know what
Who
pickle.
isn't?
It's a thing, and it's
It
a lot
is.
of fun. And they actually just at the community center right by my apartment
Oh,
opened up
that's
a
awesome.
court, and so me and my friends are definitely. It's an indoor court too, so it's a winter
Yeah.
sport at this
Oh
point. So
yeah.
I've really been getting into that, like a lot of stuff like that.
Yes.
You can really put me anywhere, and I'll play sports except basketball. My jump shot is horrendous. I can only play defense, so that's the only sport you won't catch me playing these days.
I love it. I every kid does grow up playing soccer. I think it's just the easiest sport.
It's the cheapest sport. You need a pair of cleats and the field and the ball. That's it.
Just go and you run around in circles for hours. I was the my parent. I don't remember this at all. I was the kid who was, I guess, picking dandelions in the back.
Oh yeah.
I was that kid apparently, and I was I don't have any memory of it, but that's all right
Mhm.
because they love to tell everybody that story.
Of course.
You said that you didn't pick up a camera until almost 5 years ago.
Yeah.
What made you pick up the camera?
School. So for some context, I started this whole creative journey of mine through university. I went to formerly Ryerson University, now known as Toronto Metropolitan University. I went there for my undergrad,
Okay.
and my undergrad is in sport media. So, like I said before, never touched a camera. I was a writer. I wrote for a hockey website.
Yeah.
Um, but I never really thought, like maybe I'll get into this video
Yeah.
thing. But the one thing that I always loved was like YouTube and
Yeah.
people creating content on that
Yeah.
platform. Like people like Casey Neistat or people like, I don't know, like there's so many that I would just watch, and I always think like that's so cool, but I can't
Yeah.
afford a camera. And so I got into school, and one of our classes in first year was a kind of um, called the TV lab. It was like a
Okay.
production course,
Okay.
and one of the things we had to do was create a feature on a I'm going to say TMU because that is the correct thing, even though I'm going to say Ryerson slip up. But we were supposed to do it on a TMU athlete.
Okay.
And I remember doing that with two of my friends in the program at the time, and I really enjoyed it. It
Yeah.
wasn't like my best piece of work ever. I hit
Right.
it off everywhere. You won't find it unless you really dig deep. But it was like kind of my first introduction to telling a story from like a shooting and editing perspective. And then that's when I started like, okay, this could maybe be a thing. And in my second year, we had to do or it was either in the second semester or my second year. I'm pretty sure it might have been the second year, but my timeline has been messed up since COVID. But uh, I had to do another feature on another athlete,
Okay.
and I ended up doing this one by myself. It was like a smaller project
Yeah.
a smaller feature within a bigger
Yeah.
show that we were producing, and I just remembered like I just had this like really like I want to make this the best thing I've ever done. I want to tell this story properly, and I remember I did it on one of the players, like one of the star players on the hockey team who like had his wrist sliced open in the middle of a playoff game, and it was like a awful incident, and like he spent the whole summer rehabbing and came back and was better than before. And I just remember it was like me, my idea, and like the camera that I had rented from the school. It wasn't even that good of a camera,
Yeah.
and I was just shooting this thing by myself, producing it, editing it, and I that's kind of the project that made me really fall in love with
Yeah.
this. And again, like not comparative to my work now, but I always that's when I look back on fondly as I'm like that's the moment I realized like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is even before I actually shot a hockey game. Like this is just
Okay.
me sitting down interviewing someone, shooting
Yeah.
B-roll, like very basic stuff. But
Yeah.
it was like literally the moment I'm like, okay, like I really, really enjoy this.
Love
So
that. Very cool. Very cool. What a story to tell too, my god. When I was doing my research on you, I love how you create different aspects with, you know, music and how one you did at TMU now was the hockey and the hip hop combination together. I loved that
Mhm.
just because when we think about it, we don't usually see combinations like that in when we do creative work. Partially because it's, you know, there's this new wave of creators coming in who are really thinking like yourself, thinking outside the box. How do you feel as part of this new generation of content creators? How can you continue to poke new holes in the sports world and find new ways to do things?
I really think it's just a matter of, like, going against the conventional way of thinking.
Yeah.
I think content for the longest time was really driven to by drove it was driven by people who, and this is no way, no, in no sense made to be a shot at the people who came
Right.
before
Right.
me,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I think there was a very traditional way of making content, and it wasn't generally making content for social media, it was making content for television, and
Yeah.
there's a different audience that watches television, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's our parents' parents. Um, I don't watch television as much as I used to. I
Yeah.
stream everything. Do you know what I mean? And I think
Yes.
everything you need, the biggest thing is like when it's on this thing, like you need
Yeah.
it to be captivating, and then you need to be able to grab people's attention and
Yeah.
hold it versus a television. It's like it's just there. So I think the biggest thing when I realized I wanted to do the content thing, it's like, how can I get people's attention, but also tell a story
Yep.
in a very cohesive manner? And what I'm saying is going against the conventional thinking. It's like usually when you think about hockey, you're thinking of rock or maybe
Right.
country music or,
Yes.
you know, something along those
Yes.
alternative rock, punk rock,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like that
Yeah.
still works because it just, I don't know, it's just kind of
Yeah.
synonymous with the sport.
Yep.
But my whole thinking when I did that specific video was like, okay, I've never seen anyone use a hip hop song with a hockey concept
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just decided to go for it. That was also in the middle of the pandemic where we just kind of had nothing to do, and I was going through old footage. I'm like, what can I make? Because I'm bored as hell.
Yeah.
So and when I was doing it, and I was just like, how can I make this different? And for me,
Yeah.
and I think this is something in content creation, like everyone focuses on what you can see. I
Right.
think a really good thing is what you can hear.
Yep. Yep.
You gotta, my whole thing is like you gotta get all five senses in there if you can. Obviously, there's some like smell
Yes.
you can't in a video, but like you wanna engage the viewer in different ways. So if you're watching a video, you're gonna think, okay, like if I play a basketball video
Yeah.
and with hip hop, you've seen that 100 times. But
Right.
if I give you a basketball video with like country music, you're gonna be like, what the hell is going on? So that was kind of the reason I did that, because I wanted
Yeah.
to give people like the what is this? Like I've never seen and heard this thing before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like one
Right.
does not add to the other. So
Yeah.
that was my mindset behind that video. But it's again just going against that conventional thinking.
Yeah.
And I think as content and storytelling and social media evolves,
Yes.
we have to evolve with it. And in that sense, it's like even now, 2 years after I made that video, TikTok wasn't even really there, and now it's here, and now we're realizing, like, we all have the attention span of a teaspoon, like, if I don't get your attention in 3 seconds, you're going to the next piece of content. That's
Yes.
me, like, if you don't catch me like that, I'm gonna keep
Yes.
going.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's like, that was the first way I saw of doing it, but then it just showed me, like, this works. Like, doing different things works, going against the grain, like,
Yeah.
trying to do things that catch people's attention for better or for worse, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I got really good reception on that video, people seem to really like it, but I
Yeah.
know people who also watch it and like, "Oh, I wish you would have used this kind of music," and I'm like, "Of course you would, because that's what we were shown growing up. That's what you would
Yeah.
see Hockey Night in Canada or, you know, TSN Sports
Right.
Night, same tracks." And I think they're getting better at it even in the television space, but
Yes.
that was my mindset. I was like, I
Yeah.
wanna go against the conventional thought, school of thought, because you can only reinvent the wheel so many times. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? With the same stuff over and over again.
Yes.
So
Yes. I'm always curious when when you go to a live hockey game and you have all the intro videos. I'm like, okay, what is the intro going to look like? What is, you know, what is the concept? And I think of it as the same, like same way. You can only use certain concepts so many times before we're like, all of us who have been going to games for years are kind of like, didn't you do this last year kind of thing?
Hmm.
Isn't this the same thing? That's what I think of as well. And it starts to get stale. I'm a music person. I always get amped up by not what I'm seeing, but what I'm hearing because it carries forward through the rest of the game for me. Like that's what gives me the goosebumps and the chills and everything when before the game starts.
I even think that's like you're talking about how music is important, and I think that's like something that's so important in social media today. TikTok is a platform built off of audio.
Yeah.
Instagram Reels is a feature built off of audio. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you go on TikTok for the funny videos and the memes or
Yeah.
like the actual intriguing content, whatever your algorithm decides to
Yep.
give you, but they're all based off of sound. They're
Yes.
all like, and people don't realize that. And
Okay.
this is like a gripe I have with like the creative community. Not really a gripe. It's just something I wish I would see less of. Is people are focusing. You've probably seen those like
Yeah.
videos before and after a color grade, and that's
Yeah.
really great. I love coloring a video as much as the next person,
Yes.
but you can only see that so many times. We're like, okay, I know what they're gonna do here. When people experiment with music or with
Yeah.
sound, I'm so much more intrigued. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you will hear something before you see it.
Yeah.
You that's
Yeah.
that's something you need to consider. You'll hear something before you even
Yeah.
see it. It'll
Yeah.
it'll register in your brain faster. So I love it when people try different things with audio, and I think TikTok and all these platforms do such a good job at making sure that this isn't just a visual experience. Like
Yes.
that's Instagram with photos.
Yeah.
Whether or not you agree that we need photos or not, I do think, but
Yeah.
photos a visual experience. But when you
Yes.
add audio to it, it's
Yeah.
something completely different, right? So
Completely agree.
I think you made a really good like kind of you saying like when you go to a game,
Yeah.
you're gonna see something, but you also want to feel something, and whatever they use audio wise is something that's really gonna impact the viewer or whoever was there.
Yes. Absolutely. Before we dive back into all of the creativeness, I have to ask the question that you've worked with NHL for since December 2021. Coolest and kind of most memorable moment you've had so far behind the camera, on the bench, wherever it is in the stadiums. Coolest and most memorable moment.
It's a good question. There's a few. Yeah, it's almost a year to the mark where I started working, and a lot of it's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff. Like a lot, I've gotten to do some really cool things.
Yeah.
I will give you one. I will give you one in person thing and one kind of because my job primarily is editing for the most part, so
Yeah.
I'm behind the computer a lot. But I'll give you one from behind the computer and one from when I was
Okay.
there. I'll start off with the one from behind the computer. So the first ever video I got to work on was um, how do I put this? It was a kind of a return to play hype storytelling piece
Oh,
for Carey Price, and he is like my favorite NHL
yeah.
player. Like he is my favorite athlete.
Yeah.
Like I've idolized him since I was a kid, and they knew I was a Habs fan. But like my boss was like, this is super cliche, but we're gonna give you like this piece on Carey Price if you want to do it. I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I actually finished that like back in would have been January. But we had to shelf it because we never knew if he was gonna come back this season. We just didn't know. It like there was no info on his progression. Because I don't know if you knew he tore his ACL in the
Yeah.
playoffs the year before, dealing with something else, some personal stuff in his life. So we
Yeah.
just never knew he was gonna come if he was gonna come back. And then I think it was late in the season. They're like, okay, he's coming back. Do you still have it? Made a few fixes to it and posted it. And then it was just shared. And his wife shared it. Like his Carey Price's wife, like put it on story. So part of me, like maybe he saw it. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he doesn't care about
Probably
this.
did.
But for me, it was
Yeah.
still really cool. Just the fact that like that was the very first video I got to do for my like for the
Yeah.
league. It was on my favorite athlete. I got to do a storytelling piece. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't like
Yeah.
like lights or whatever. It was very like talk his teammates talking about his importance, like the coaches, like So that was a really cool like moment for me just to see that out there and like to see that
Yes.
people close to him saw it
That's
and that it impacted them. That was really
yeah.
cool for me. The coolest or most memorable moment in person could be a lot like the Stanley Cup final. Like I got to go
Oh my god.
this year and it was unbelievable. Like I remember game one
Great.
in Colorado. I got to go on
Yeah.
the bench for the warm up, and like we're walking on the ice at on Ball Arena to get to the bench, and it's loud as hell. Like those fans, like, and the
Yeah.
lights come on, the players come onto the bench, and like I'm like this far away from like Nathan McKinnon, and like, like
So jealous.
Kale McCarr's over there doing
Oh,
something, and on the other side, all the Lightning are there, and it was just such a cool moment
yeah,
just to be there, and like,
yeah,
um, it was unbelievable. Although, like, I think for me, like the coolest moment had to be like without a doubt something I'll never forget is I got to be on the ice after the cup was awarded,
I saw.
um, to take video and stuff.
Yeah,
I was originally behind the Colorado bench when they
okay,
won, and I got the celebration of them coming in the corner, throwing their stuff off and everything. And then I got to go on the ice shortly after when they allowed all media on the ice. And there was two particular things in there. One, I just have a shot, and it's my favorite shot I've ever taken. It's just Gabe Landeskog like hoisting the thing. And
yes,
before I even got to the rink that day, I always make a list of things I want to get in a certain situation. And I knew they had a chance to win it. So I had like three shots I wanted to get if they won. And
yeah.
one of them was like anything of Landeskog
Oh
lifting the cup. And I got it, like I saw it in my mind and I got it. I followed him for at least 10 minutes waiting for him to get the cup back. And he finally got it. It's like one of my favorite shots I've ever gotten. I will never
God,
forget that. But I think the other cool thing about that moment was like I got to see them with their families,
yeah,
and it's incredible to see like because that's the reason like imagine being a kid and your parents putting you in hockey back when you were like
yeah.
5,
Oh God,
and
yeah.
then paying for your league fees,
It's
taking
not
you
a
to
cheap
games,
sport.
and it's just like it's so
Yeah,
heartwarming to see the relief and the joy in these parents when
yeah,
they see their kid complete their goal. And
yeah,
like I just remember there was one like I was Kale McCarr with his dad, and he gave his dad the cup to lift up. And
yeah,
he did, and then he put it down, gave it back to Kale, and his dad just started crying. And that's when I realized, like, yo, this is so much bigger than like these
yeah,
guys. Like, this is so much like
yeah,
Nazem Kadri with his parents, like being the first
yeah.
Muslim person to win a cup. Like, there
Yes,
are so many different things that I saw that were like, oh, like this makes me feel so good.
yes,
Like that whole night was one of the best, like most memorable nights since I
yeah.
started working there. I
That's awesome.
I I maybe, hopefully I get to go to more,
Yeah.
cup finals like that, but you'll never forget. I don't think you'll ever like forget that first experience. You know what I mean?
I'm itching for my team to go back. I was there when they won the 05-06, so I'm like,
Who's
when
your team?
Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh, the Hurricanes. Hey, they got a good chance this year. You never know.
You never know. We had one last year. We had one the year before. We'll see what happens this year.
There is one thing I'll say to anybody who eventually make because like that was a dream situation for me. Like
Yeah.
I would love to be on the ice at a Stanley Cup final, like
Yeah.
presenting cup. That's always been the dream line.
Yep.
Take it for anyone who ever, whether I don't care if it's the NBA final, I don't care if it's the World Cup, like
Yeah.
the FIFA World Cup. Like if you ever get to a position where you're in your dream scenario, take
Yes.
a few seconds, take a step back, and just appreciate where you
Yeah.
are. I remember when the cup was being handed around, the families, whatever. I literally went to center ice. Went back and I took a photo because I just wanted to remember it, and I
Yeah.
just saw what was happening. And I actually like in that 5 minute span, because
Awesome.
they were just handing the cup around. Like I got a lot of
Yeah.
footage. I needed to take a second that back just to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I actually like FaceTime my parents like on the ice because they were like super amped. And I FaceTime my roommate because he's my coworker, but he's an Avs fan too. So like if you're ever in that situation, take a step back, enjoy it, remember and feel
Yeah.
what you were there. Because I can always remember it through what I shot, but I'm glad I took a few moments to step back and soak it all in. Like if you're ever in that position, anybody like do that because it makes a big difference in how you remember the moment.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It goes back to why you love sports so much.
Exactly.
Those moments. With your experience as a content producer, as an editor, what is the best way to brand yourself and to get your work and your name out there?
That's a really good question, and I don't even think I have figured that out yet. I Some people seem to you're like your brand's great. I'm like I could be better. I think the biggest thing for anybody who's looking to expand their brand and get their name out there is just post everything you have
Yeah.
that you want to showcase. Post the work that you want to showcase, but also create the work you want to be hired for and share that too. I think one of the biggest questions and the main question and the question I'm getting tired of answering in the best way possible is how do you get into this? How do you do this? How
Right.
do you start? You
Right.
just have to go out and do it. You have to
Yeah.
go out and shoot, create content,
Yep.
publish it, share it. Like,
Yep.
I remember when I started taking this seriously, I was like, "Do I make a new Instagram account for this? Like,
Oh god, yeah.
do I keep my personal account? Do I make like a
Yeah.
video account for this stuff?" And I originally did, and I posted video and design on it, but I realized I had to start from zero. I had to start from scratch, and like I had like maybe 14,000, it's 14,000, 1,400 followers on
Yeah.
my main Instagram account, and I just kind of decided, you know what? If I'm starting fresh, I'm gonna have a little harder time reaching out to people. So I kind of said, like, F it, like, I'm going to post this on my main account, not care what other people
Yeah.
think, and
Yeah.
just make this my personal account, but mixed in with my brand because, like,
Okay.
a big part of what I do is my work and my career. So I
Absolutely.
just I just started sharing it and posting my work, and some people took liberties for that, and you're like, "Why are you sharing all your work?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
because I want to find a career in this, and I have to.
Right.
Hopefully, the right person sees it. So I think to answer your question, if you want to get into this line of work and improve your brand and
Yeah.
get your name out there, post your work. Do not be afraid of posting work, because that's the way people are going to find you. That's how I was found for certain opportunities. That's how people see your work is in social media. Like,
Yeah.
and also another thing is don't be afraid to put yourself out there as a
Yeah.
person. Like,
Yeah.
I've noticed a really big difference in the way people approached me as
Yeah.
as a freelancer, but also as a professional. Where when I started putting my face on the internet, and
Yep.
I know it's really scary to put your face on the internet,
Yep.
but when people put a face to a name and connect that to your work, it
Yeah.
actually adds a lot of value. I'm not saying you have to start becoming a TikToker, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to, put your face out there and do whatever you want with it. But don't
Yeah.
just make sure you're posting your work, because I know so many people who ask me, how do I get noticed? And I ask them, hey, I'm not seeing your work on Instagram. I'm
Right.
not seeing you on TikTok.
Right.
That's the first thing you have to do. And
Right.
it's kind of something you think is, we should all be doing that, but some people don't think about it. So just post your stuff, share your stuff.
Yeah.
Shameless self promotion is the name of the game. Do not worry. Shameless self promotion will get you places.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah. Someone who I get to work very closely with in the podcasting world, his whole phrase is just hit record. And so it is that biggest fear of putting your work out there,
Hmm.
starting a podcast because you think nobody will listen to it, but all you have to do is hit record, hit the
Yeah.
button, hit share, and go and show people what you've created and what you've done.
And what you
Um,
have to offer. Yeah, that's exactly it. I had the same thing when I started my YouTube channel.
yeah.
I just did it like because when I was bored
Yeah.
during the pandemic, of course, but like I never thought I'd be in a place where I'd have X amount of subscribers, or I just wanted to do it as a creative outlet. And
Yep.
like you said, just hit record, and it's a trial by fire. You try different things. One of my favorite sayings is, I'm just gonna throw shit at the wall. Sorry if I can't swear on this
No,
podcast,
you can.
but
You
I'm gonna throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
That's the same with YouTube. That's the same with my video work. I'm just gonna try it and see
Yeah,
like what the hell happens. And because
yeah,
if you don't try, you're never gonna know, and then you're gonna regret it down the line when you see someone tried what you wanted to do and they succeeded. So
yes.
what do you have to lose?
We've had a great amount of conversation about community already, which is I think so important. YouTube, it's podcasts, it's whatever platforms you have. Community is massive. You have one of my favorite series that you've created on your social platforms is the asking your creator friends a piece of advice. So I'm going to ask you the question now. I'm going to flip it around back
All
on you.
right, all right.
And what is your best piece of advice for someone who is just starting off?
Oh, that is a really good question. And I realize how hard this question is now because I'm usually the one asking it. But I think the best piece of advice is, if you're thinking about doing it, just fucking do it.
Yeah,
Like, I think so many people, and
yeah,
I'm the same, like, so many people get caught up in the what if it doesn't work? What
yeah,
if it doesn't look good? What if people don't like it? What if this? What if that? But you
yeah,
never say to yourself, what if it works? Do
yeah.
you know what I mean? And
God, yeah.
I think, like, you never know what's gonna happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can put up a video and it can get 500 views, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You
Yeah,
could get a video up, and on TikTok, you could easily get 100,000 views within a day.
absolutely.
but people just get caught up in the fear of failure.
Yep.
And I'm a big like there's a Casey Neistat quote, and I cannot remember the quote for the life of me, and it was my desktop quote for the longest time. But it's like if you let fear drive your creative passion, you're never gonna get anywhere.
Yeah.
You have to take risks.
Yes.
You have to keep taking risks in order to
Yeah.
find where you want to be. So like you're literally just it's as basic as it is, you just have to
Yeah.
get up, do it, do the thing, post it, share it,
Yeah.
because you're never gonna you
Yeah.
don't want to be like 10 years down the line and be like,
Yeah.
what if I tried this? I could be in a
Yeah.
completely different place in my life. So that's the best piece of advice I would give, is
Yeah.
just to like literally hit record, get to it, get on your horse and do it. If you have ideas, write them down because they'll
Yeah.
disappear. Like that's probably the biggest thing I would say. It's like
Yeah.
you need to stop being worried about it not working and maybe
Yeah.
ask yourself, what if it works?
Yep. I've heard so many people too say that they haven't gone and done it either because they think that they need expensive gear and that they need all of this cool and flashy shit. And I'm like, you literally have this. I'm like,
Hmm.
this is one of the some of the best like
Yeah,
beginner
no, they're excellent.
you can absolutely have. And so I think that's another thing too, is people get so caught up in like, oh, I need this camera or I need something else. And I'm like, sure, but like as a beginner, you can literally do it with voice memos or you can
Yeah.
do it through Zoom. Like you don't have to have all the flashy shit in the world to
No,
start.
the best camera or the best piece of gear is the one you have at hand. If
Yeah.
that's my phone, it's my phone. If that's my camera,
Yeah.
it's my camera. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
think people get so caught up in not having this gear, how expensive this gets started.
Yeah.
If you really want to take it seriously, like it's an investment, but
Right.
there are certain situations where like if all I have is my phone and my camera's across the room and something's happening, I'm gonna capture it with my phone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yep.
like I think platforms and social media is built for phone stuff. So I think you have a very good point. It's just like if you want to do it, like literally whatever you have at your disposal, don't let the don't let the barrier to entry be what you don't
Yep.
have. You have enough. Everyone has this.
Yes.
Everyone has a window for lighting. That's it. That's all you need to get started. And then if you
Yep.
realize you want to do it more, then you go look at the
Yep.
cameras. Then you go look at the nice microphones or whatever you want to do,
Yep.
right? So
I think that was also the cool thing about TikTok is it was the you set your phone up wherever you can set your phone up at the greatest angle, and that's where you record until people started figuring out, oh, we can upload videos and things like that. But that like TikTok starting that way, people are
yep.
like, I can create from my phone. I don't have to. And I think that was the coolest thing about that is that people were like, I can do this without having to go and spend so much money as a beginner.
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
that was fantastic to see because everybody's creativity really just took like bloomed during the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think it just shows to like the world we're in now,
Yeah.
you can literally make content about anything. And I have people reaching out to me about sports stuff. I have people reaching out to me about weddings, but like some people are just like, I want to do this, make videos. How would you recommend? And like
Yeah.
it is so easy these days. You can find, I mean, TikTok is such a
Yeah.
I can't even fathom how many videos, genres of videos, different
Oh
parts
my
of
God.
TikTok there are on, like me alone,
Can't
like
even
my algorithm, like I'm getting sports stuff obviously, but then I'm getting camera and film stuff.
Yeah.
I'm getting like, you know, I animals, I love dog, and like my TikTok's all over the place, but like that is just like the
Yeah.
analogy of like the internet, like the iceberg. It's like we only use
Yes.
10% of the internet. I'm
Yeah.
convinced you only use 5% of TikTok
I
at
agree.
any given time, because it's just like one day I'll be on TikTok and I'll be scrolling and I'll find something I never knew how to niche
Yeah.
for it. And it's just there. But I think that just shows like the depth of like anybody
Yes.
in this day and age can make content, no matter what it is. That, and again, that even goes for something like YouTube. YouTube is a search engine. You can
Yeah.
literally look up. I look up food recipes all the time, and like
I do.
you know what I mean. Everyone does
Yes.
that, but like it's just like YouTube is so useful for it. My dad uses YouTube for plumbing or for fixing stuff around the
Yeah.
house. Like people make stuff about the most convoluted and
Yes.
small things. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're out there and you don't know if you're worried about getting started, like it's so
Yeah.
easy. Anyone can do it.
For you, where do you find the most joy and creativity in the work you do?
That's a really good question. I know I said that before, but I'll say it again. I think the one is having a blank slate just to kind of create something new.
Yeah,
Whenever I start a new project, I love just starting from a blank timeline
yeah,
or, whatever, just starting fresh and being able to create something that no one's made before and just start anew. But another thing I really enjoy is the reaction or the things I see people experience from the work I make.
yeah,
And it varies depending on if it's, a sports video or wedding video. Obviously, they're completely different genres, but I'm actually going to touch on both. But one of my favorite projects that I made was like project one of my favorite videos ever, and one of the videos that I will never forget, like the reaction on social media, was when Colorado won the Stanley Cup. That night, we were on the ice. I obviously shot everything, and then they went off to party, and then we went back to our hotel. We're exhausted. It's like 2 in the morning, and we have a flight. Like I have to catch a flight next morning to Toronto at like 9, 10 a.m.
nice,
But instead, I decided to shack up in my hotel room with my colleague Troy, who shot the game with me,
yeah,
and we're just going through our footage and we're like, oh man, like we're on a high, like we're buzzing because like we both got to do this, right?
yes,
So and then I knew before the game I had a song in mind. I knew what I wanted to do with it if they won. And when I was looking at my footage, I was playing the song in my headphones and I'm like, okay, no, I know exactly what I'm about to do right now.
awesome.
And I just sat down and started editing. And it was like 3 or 4 in the morning at this point.
Yeah.
And I basically said, you know what? Like at this point, what's
Just
the
sleep.
difference? Whether getting 3 hours of sleep and having to wake up at 6 to catch the Uber, what's
Yeah,
the difference? Like, really, what's the difference in me going to
yeah,
bed? So I just edited that all night. Um, and it was just like a recap piece. This was nothing that was asked from me by work. This was nothing that my bosses said me to do. This is something I just was so totally inspired in
yeah.
the moment. And I just got into that zone of flow, which is a really big thing I
God, I
love
love it.
feeling is just when
Yes,
you're going and you're driven and you're not going to stop because you're just
yeah,
like dialed in. And I
yeah,
wasn't going to finish until that video was done. So it's probably like 5 in the morning, 5:30, and I'm like, I got to be up in like 2 hours. This video's done. I'm gonna take a nap. But I sent it through for them to see in the morning, and it got approved. Everyone liked it. It was very well received, and
nice.
then we posted it not long after I got to the airport. And I like retweeted it. And I said, this is like the Stanley Cup from my capture from my lens. And I just retweeted it. And I got on my flight and I'm headed back home, sleep on the plane, not checking my phone. And when I landed, I look at my phone and I'm like, holy, because the reaction that was like, that's one of my favorite things. It's like
Yeah,
seeing a piece of work impact people.
yes.
And just to see like all these Colorado Avalanche fans or
Yeah,
hockey fans in general saying like these guys deserve it. This is an amazing like
yeah,
story. Like seeing their people commenting on the families because that was a big part of the video I mentioned before.
yeah,
Like the family part of the celebration was so
yeah,
key. And there were people saying this made me tear up. I just got chills, and like that for me is the biggest compliment as a
yeah,
video creative is when someone says to me, "I your video just gave me chills."
absolutely.
And that comes from this is like one of the best pieces of advice that was given in my third year of university. I took an editing specialty course, and my teacher at the time gave us like I said, the best piece of advice I've ever been given as a video
Yeah,
creative, and that was to the main thing you want to target when you're editing or creating the video is people's emotions.
yeah,
You need to edit with emotions in mind. What do you want the viewer to feel?
yeah,
And whatever it is, like
yeah,
make that the main spine of your video. And for me, in this case, like a lot of my videos are hit videos. I want to fire people up. I want to make
right.
you run through a wall. In this case, I wanted to give people chills. I wanted to make
Yeah,
people reminisce and remember what just happened 24 hours ago in Tampa Bay with them. Like I wanted people to feel that. And so
yeah,
just to see people feeling that emotion towards a
absolutely.
product I made is one of the best feelings, one of my favorite things to experience in my line of work. And yeah, like that was it's kind of I think creatives are very scared to admit that their work is very good or they you want to be humble of course, but I think it is one of my favorite and best pieces of work because of the reaction people gave it,
Yeah,
because of that emotion that brought out of the fans. So that's one of the best things about my job is being able to make people feel
I love
emotion,
that.
certain different things, giving them chills, whatever it may be.
Yeah, For me, I love the zone. I call it my zone, and I get into it, and I'm like, nobody talk to me, nobody touch me. I'm not moving from this spot until this thing is done, because I feel like I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I've only been editing this for an hour, and I look up and it's been like hours, and I'm like, oh, I'm like,
Yeah,
I was so in it that I was not coming
you
out of
lose
it
track
for
of time.
nothing.
No, I know it's a very weird phenomenon. I
Yeah,
don't think I still don't know where it comes from,
I don't
but
know.
it's incredible to like have that feeling of like you're just so dialed. It's like an athlete, you know, in a game or
Yeah,
practice, you just black out. Like I'm gonna be editing after this because I have a video I have to finish, and I know I'm
love
gonna have to like find that zone where I'm gonna
zone.
be like looking at the
Yeah,
clock and I'm like, oh my god, it's 1 o'clock. I need to go to
yeah,
bed. But like it's
yeah.
good to have that feeling because like means you got work, you got shit done, you know, like that's the biggest thing. And being excited for a project, I think is a really I love coming home from a shoot or whatever and just getting into it. You know what I mean? I shot a wedding this past weekend and all I wanted to do was just edit the shit out of this footage. So it's
That's
like
so
it's a
good.
great feeling to like get into that
Yes.
zone.
My last question for you is just what inspires you?
Huh. Other people. I okay, so there's a fine line I have to walk with this because I think there's a fine line between being inspired by someone and
Yeah,
then like imposter syndrome. And
okay.
I know that's something a lot of people in the sports world, in the sports creative world, or in the creative world in
Yes.
general,
Yeah,
uh, deal with, and I deal with it all the time. But I love seeing what other people are doing
yeah,
and how people are innovating. And there are so many creatives in the sports world that inspire me. I cannot name a single one because there are so many that I've
yeah,
gotten to know over the last 3 or 4
yeah,
years of just doing this. But just to see what other people are making and innovating different things and trying different things. And when I see them, I'm like, okay, how do I take that concept and do it my own way? Or how
yeah,
can I take this idea and change it to apply to somewhere I want to do?
yeah,
So I think that's a really big deal is being inspired by others in your field. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be within your niche. Like
yeah,
I met the most incredible group of people during the pandemic, like all creatives based in Toronto, all
yeah,
internet strangers for the most part. And we made a Discord group and became like the closest group of friends. And I like we all do different things. Like some of them are commercial
yeah,
videographers and photographers, some of them do music videos, some of them do fashion, some of them do
yeah,
music. And I'm like, and I'm just I do sports stuff. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
very like it. Everyone has their thing, but
yeah,
it's just so getting to know them and getting to see and work with other people. You're inspired because you're around creative energy.
yeah.
So I think like that's a really thing that gets me going. It's like
I love it.
what are the people around me doing? Why are they doing it this way? How
Yeah,
can I help them? And how can I take this and apply it to my own work? So I
absolutely.
think seeing what other people are doing and working with others is very inspiring to me.
I love that in the midst of pandemic, we were still able to find ways and find that community once again to keep us moving forward and keep us
Absolutely.
through such an incredibly hard time. I think it's a very beautiful thing. Um I love learning from other people. I love getting to look at other people's content, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, how could I, like what are ways that I could go and do something similar but in my own way? Like not everybody's the same, and you don't want to be the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And
so
I do think there is, like I said, though, a fine line with that when it comes to imposter syndrome because sometimes you consume so much content
yeah,
and then you start thinking like, shit, I'll never get there. And then that gets in your head and the seeds planted and you're like,
yeah,
you feel like you're not going to create the best work because
yeah,
whatever reason you're giving yourself. But I think you always have to remind yourself is that like you're on a specific path to do what you're meant to do
yes,
for a certain reason. Just because you're seeing someone else do it a different way doesn't mean you're never going to get there. You're just doing it at your pace, you're doing it at your level. Like
yeah,
be inspired by people, but don't wish you were in other people's shoes or don't ask yourself why you're not there because maybe they're wondering the same thing about you.
yeah,
Maybe you're wondering like how do I get to be where you're at?
yep,
And I've had that situation with my friends all the time, with those creative friends I mentioned, and like it made me realize like we're all the same person.
yeah,
We're all just at the end of the day, people making things for the
yeah,
internet and for clients and for work and whatever. And we're all doing it at our own pace. So it's like it's a fine line, but I love being inspired by others and I make sure to draw a line between inspiration and then
yeah,
feeling like I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And that's just something that comes over time. I still watch videos on
Right.
the internet
Yeah.
and people do making cool stuff, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. Like, I can't believe it. Like, I'm never gonna be able to do that. Like, I'll
Right.
never learn that. But like, you will, and I have. I've
Yeah.
done stuff that I've seen other
Yeah.
people do, and I never thought I would get to do, and
Yeah.
now I'm here. So it's just walking a fine line and making sure you have a balance there.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And Juan, I can't thank you enough for being here and talking with me again today. It was such a treat to get to hear more of your story, and get to hear your creativity. So I truly appreciate you coming on and talking to me today.
No, thank you. I appreciate you bringing me on. This is something like obviously I do on my YouTube channel is talk to other creatives, but it's very different for me to be the one on this side and be like being asked all the questions. But like I appreciate it a lot, and I think content creators. The one thing I've gotten, because I think you'll understand this from
Yeah.
doing a podcast style
Yeah.
thing, is that like we're always, as creatives, we're always the one telling
Yeah.
other people's story, but
Yeah.
no one ever
Yes.
asks about our story. It's like,
Yes.
what's that saying? It's like, I don't remember what it is. There's like a analogy I had in my mind. It just disappeared.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, you never get. It's like we're
Yeah.
always telling the stories. We're never getting asked about our stories.
Yeah.
So like, I always appreciate it when someone's like, "Hey, I want to chat with you and hear about what you got to do."
Yeah.
And just because I did that when I was starting off, or even these days, I still do it. But I just appreciate being able to tell my story. So thank you for having
Yes.
me on. I really
Yes.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't wait to see more of your work, especially with opening night not that far away in hockey season back.
Mhm.
But I can't wait to see more of your incredible content.
Thank you. No, I will. I'm very excited too, and it's going to
Yeah.
be a long year, but I'm ready to get back at it. And I'm excited to see what you do with your
Yes.
platform and everything you're
Thank
doing.
you.
Really
Thank
exciting.
you. Thank you. I so appreciate it. And if you do not follow him, everything, all of his socials are going to be linked right down below. So you can go follow along on his incredible journey. And as always, I will see you guys back here next time. Bye, y'all.